a show about surrounding yourself with beauty and taking care of the environment, all in one, coming up next. Hi, I'm Alan Smith. Welcome to the show. You know, I'm all about surrounding myself with beauty. Just look at these gorgeous violas. And I'm also interested in the environment, and I think the two can come together quite beautifully. You know, I do everything I can, like turn off the water when I brush my teeth, conserve water, keep that thermostat adjusted where I'm conserving energy. I recycle, I reuse, all those things. And I bet you do too. So today we're going to visit a green expo in Louisville, Kentucky. Plus take a trip to Union Springs, Alabama to see what the Bonnie Plant Farms are doing to be a greener company. We'll also travel to Canada, where I talk to a biologist about the importance of having good organic soil. I'm also going to show you how to make this very simple compost bin. Now that's all coming up, and as soon as we come back, we're going to take a look at that Green Expo, so don't go away. On a recent trip to Louisville, Kentucky, I had the opportunity to visit the Green Industry and Equipment Expo. Now, if you've never been to one of these things, I can tell you it's a real eye-opener. You can find anything you want in lawn and garden. While I was there, I met with the president of Steel Power Tools to discuss the green message the conference is sending. You know, Fred, a lot of these conferences are so centered these days around the idea of being green or greener, right, or embracing sustainability for the planet, which is a good thing. Sure. But I think you really have to do your homework as to which companies truly are green, because a lot of them are painting themselves green.
You're absolutely correct, Alan, and corporately we have to be very careful in terms of credibility, because in this day and age, everybody wants to be green. It's the in thing to do. At Steel, though, I think we have a pretty good track record that we can stand on in terms of technology. If you go to the California Air Resources, you would find that our FS 100 is actually the cleanest in terms of emissions trimmer in the United States. I guess I could also point to our biodegradable oil that we use for lubrication on the guide bar.
That's what I found fascinating this past year, and we began using it.
Is the oil comes off the guide bar and goes into the earth. It is biodegradable.
You're not contaminating the soil.
Exactly. So I think Steel has invested in, of course, given our heritage of being a German company.
Fred, do you find the fact that Germany is so green, and of course Steel is a German-based company, that early on that began to influence what happens here in the United States?
Very definitely, Alan. I mean, we're such a large country. We've had the luxury of being able to do a lot of things that in Europe they couldn't do, and we're now, I think, just catching up to them in being more environmentally responsible.
Well, keep up the good work.
Thank you very much, Alan.
You bet. Now, after the break, we'll get started on that trash can compost bin and take a trip to Union Springs, Alabama, so don't go anywhere. I have to say, I'm one of these people who love compost. Well, I should say I love the results of compost. If you want a beautiful garden, you ought to be taking advantage of the things around your garden or yard. Now let me show you how to create a compost bin. If you've never done this before, it's really a lot easier than you think. What I'm starting out with here is about a 40 to 50 gallon standard trash bin. And it's important that you get one that has a lid where the lid's lock, and I'll explain that in just a moment. And what I've done is I've gone around it and I've drilled these holes all the way around. I've used a 3/4 inch bit, and here in the top I've used a 1/2 inch bit. And this allows air to circulate through the bin itself. And you can see I have it sitting on a pair of concrete blocks, again for air to get inside the compost, which is an important component to making it. Now what you want to do is you want to use green and brown and alternate that. And what I mean by that is green could be any sort of clippings from the garden. It could be scraps from the kitchen. Now, you don't want to put any sort of meat product or cooked vegetables in here, but things like the peelings of apples or carrots, the tops of carrots, that sort of thing, that qualifies as green. You want to chop it up in tiny pieces and throw it in here with some brown. And the brown could be the leaves that you rake up, or straw, or anything, or pine needles that you have. And so by layering those, you're adding carbon and a source of nitrogen. Carbon, the brown, nitrogen, the green. Okay? So you start layering it, and then you can turn your compost quite easily just by putting the lid on it, locking it down, and rolling it around. Now, you want to make sure that you don't get too much compost in here and it makes it too difficult for you to move around. Or you can take a drill with an auger and turn the compost. You want to do that about every 2 weeks. In about 8 to 12 weeks, depending on what you put in here, you're going to have some black gold that's going to make your plants grow like you can't believe. Now, this is something that we can all do at home, create our own compost. But I have to tell you, large companies like Bonnie Plant Farm in Union Springs, Alabama, they're doing greener work on a huge scale. I had a chance to visit with Dennis Thomas about what their industry is doing to be a little greener. Dennis, I don't think I've seen so many beautiful, healthy tomato plants in one place in my whole life.
Well, Alan, we specialize in veggies and herbs. Almost 98% of what we grow would be vegetables and herbs. Very few flowers.
Well, how many in a given year, let's just take tomatoes, would you produce here?
Over 100 million tomato plants.
100 million. That is just incredible. You know, the nursery industry, like so many others, is really beginning to be a little more conscious of green initiatives, trying to be a little more eco-friendly.
Right.
What are some of the things that are going on here that you would consider earth-friendly?
We were going greener before going greener was cool. About 10 years ago, we started replacing plastic with peat cups. The peat that actually disappears into the soil.
The idea of the peat cup is that you're reducing those plastic pots that we've all known for so many years that end up in the landfill with something that actually decomposes in the soil. But what about the flats? I know they're plastic. How do you deal with those?
We only purchase about 60% of what we think we're going to produce. So we force ourselves to reuse the plastic flats over and over and over again.
For me, being a local grower is a way to help reduce your carbon imprint.
We have about 50 locations around the country. We are local just about everywhere we go.
So what you have is really a local grower that is providing plants from that particular region and cutting way down on the cost of fuel for transportation.
Exactly.
It really is amazing how much you can produce in what is really a small area.
We have about a 30 by 30 garden here at our farm in Alabama. We grew 10 months a year, but we grew 6,000 pounds of food.
My heavens.
It was unbelievable. I don't know of anyone who doesn't have room for a container garden. You can grow lots of herbs, probably 1,000 cherry tomatoes on one plant. So everyone can do a little part.
Next, I'll meet you at the Garden Home Retreat. Answer a viewer question, plus we'll check out this delicious recipe, so stay with us. Now, what I want to talk to you about here is not a petunia, but a supertunia. Just take a look at this. What gorgeous purple blooms. That's how it got its name, Royal Velvet Supertunia. You see, they're great for hanging baskets, window boxes, containers, and any kind of landscaping where you've got full sun. Royal Velvet's deep purple color looks great with orange, hot pink, and chartreuse. More colorful plants can be found at pallansmith.com. In the spring, problems can creep up faster than you think. Just look at the black spot that's already on this old-fashioned rose called Ducher. I just love the white flowers on it. It blooms all summer. So I'm using this 3-in-1 organic spray that will take care of mites, insects, as well as fungus. So the black spot, of course, is a fungus, and this will also take care of any insects that are on it. If you look at my tulips, this is a variety called Maureen. We had an infestation of aphids last week, and I gave them a light spraying, and the aphids went away. And just look at these gorgeous buds. You know, anytime you use chemicals in your garden, you should use them in an isolated and responsible way. And it always pays to try to get a jump on the problem before it occurs. We've had so much rain lately that the black spot, well, it got ahead of me this year, but I'm on it now. Okay, now it's time to answer viewer questions, one of my favorite parts of the show. Now today we have a letter from Maggie in Texas, and she writes, I keep reading when gardening that it's really important to have good soil. Can you explain why? I'm just getting started. Well, Maggie, soil is really the foundation of good gardening, and there are lots of components about it, and I encourage you to go online, go on my website, pallensmith.com, and check out as much as you would like. I recently took a trip to Canada to visit the premier horticulture plant where I met biologist Susan Parent. We talked about the importance of creating and having good soil, so let's take a look. Susan, this is quite an interesting garden.
Yes, it's a garden that's maybe 4 years ago that they planted all these different crops.
Yeah, potentilla and gorgeous hydrangea.
Yeah, and as you can see, you know, some of them are really taking up, that are really surviving well.
You know, what's interesting to me, and I know you're a biologist and have spent a lot of time working on the microbiology side, there's so much that goes on in the soil that we don't really account for as gardeners or lovers of gardens. For the home gardener, what are some suggestions you give them for making sure the soil is in balance?
Standard things like, you know, the pH and all that of your soil. Now and then you have to be sure, you know, if you're growing certain plants like blueberry plants or things like that, you need the, you know, the right pH. And then you have to have the right proportions of organic matter and your sand and your clay particles in your soil to make sure that all those organisms are thriving in your soil. And there's the beneficial organism that you can add now into your garden, you know, the mycorrhiza or the peat moss that contains these microorganisms that you can add, and all that is beneficial when you're, you know, starting up your garden, or if you're amending your soil, even though once the garden is all established.
You know, I think there's such a distinction that we often overlook, and between the fertility of soil and the texture of soil. They're two different things entirely.
The plant cannot generate, you know, the nutrients all by himself. The plant needs to pick them up. And so you do need to add fertilizer, you know, every year, or compost that can supply, you know, some of those important nutrients,
yeah.
Right? You know, a lot of people now are using mulch and things like that, which is great to keep the moisture, but you still need to work those 6 inches of soil where those plants are actively picking up the nutrients.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons that I embrace organic gardening so passionately, is because it really is about feeding the soil, and when you feed and care for the soil and that community that's in the soil, well, you're in turn feeding and taking care of your plants. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.
And Maggie, I hope that helps. Just remember this, the more you learn about the soil, the better the gardener you'll be. All right, coming up next, we're going to sink our teeth into this delicious recipe, so stay tuned. Now, staying with this green theme, this past summer my friend Cappy Peck came to see me at the Garden Home Retreat and prepared the most delicious dish that she calls the Green Goddess Salad. Many of the fresh ingredients came straight out of the garden, but if you think about it, the growing season is not that far away, so check out this. Welcome to the kitchen. I'm here with one of my friends, Cappy, who I love to talk food with. It's because she's so doggone creative in the kitchen. Thanks for coming out today.
Thanks for asking me.
And what'd you think of those tomatoes?
They were amazing. Amazing.
I think we've harvested already about 800 pounds. Now tell me about this salad we're working on.
This is to highlight the heirlooms.
Yeah.
We're going to make a green goddess dressing. Green goddess was in vogue back in the 20s.
Oh, yeah.
And then
My
ranch
grandmother
kind
loved
of, I love it.
Yeah.
Then ranch kind of stole its thunder, but it's enjoying a renaissance. And it's a mayonnaise-based dressing.
Nothing wrong with mayonnaise.
Nothing at all. Chock full of fresh herbs and a little bit of anchovy.
Okay, so how do we
Wanna
get
make the
started?
dressing?
Let's do it.
Food processor in your work bowl, 2 cups of mayonnaise, a couple of anchovies if you desire to use them.
Yep.
And then we're going to add 2 tablespoons of tarragon vinegar, 1/4 of a cup of the flat leaf Italian parsley, 1/4 of a cup of chives. What I think makes the Green Goddess is the fresh tarragon.
Mm-hmm. How much tarragon?
2 tablespoons of tarragon. You know, it's a pretty intense herb.
Oh, yeah.
So it can overpower. And a pinch of salt. fresh ground black pepper.
Yep. All right, here we go. Let her rip.
This will keep for a good week in the refrigerator, and it's just a great thing to have around. And then taste it if you like more of a pronounced tarragon flavor.
Yep, or more anchovy.
Forgot the garlic. How can
Well, I
I
wonder
do
where
that?
we're going to go with the
Couple
garlic.
of cloves of garlic.
Okay.
All right, let's see how this tastes.
We just wrapped up our garlic. Nothing wrong with that. That's
good?
fabulous.
So,
Heavens.
here's the dressing. And this salad is going to go together so quickly. I like to use the romaine. I love the seedless cucumbers. I didn't have any on hand, so easy
Yeah.
way to seed it. Just cut it down the center.
Yep, strip them out with your
Strip
thumb.
it out,
I just
exactly.
run my thumb through there.
Got a little bit of Vidalia onion. Any sweet onion would work. And those have a little bit of heat.
And you used about what?
Couple, about 2 green onions.
Okay, yep, the white bit, not so much the green.
Exactly.
All right, now what's next?
So we've got that. We're ready to compose the salad.
All right, so now you're dressing the
I'm just going to dress the romaine, and
Okay.
I'm going to use my clean hands
Okay.
and just toss the romaine in it. And then we'll do a little nest of romaine, and then we'll sprinkle some of the cucumbers, the Vidalias. These are sweet grape tomatoes, the sun golds, any of the little
I
toy
love
box tomatoes.
those.
And then
Ooh,
the
look at
heirlooms. And we're going to drizzle some additional dressing over the heirlooms. Green goddess over the tomatoes. And then to end, a little bit of chiffonade of fresh basil.
I have to say, it's the freshness of those ingredients, and particularly those herbs, that make that salad dressing so delicious. So make sure you have plenty of herbs on hand, whether you're growing them in containers or in your garden. Well, that's all the time we have for today's show. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. Now, any of the information in today's show can be found on my website, including that recipe. From the garden, I'm Alan Smith.
In this garden I dream of a bed of flowers. Bluebirds sing of the beauty all around us. And every time the sun comes out, I can't help but smile. Oh, no, I can't help but smile.